All right, here at the ISU headquarters with Yisrael Horowitz. It's good to be back. Shalom.
Good
Awesome.
to see you all.
Yeah. Well, here we are, sticking with the Torah and living through another day.
Another day with the Torah.
Yeah. Apparently, you don't vanish if you stop following the oral Torah, the oral tradition.
But who will marry you?
That's right. Who will marry you?
Yeah.
But lo and behold, my friend, you were married. Wow. Wow. Yeah, it was a great wedding. Great thing.
Thank God, it was nice. Yeah.
It's not easy to get married nowadays any way that you cut it, so I personally have taken a lot of new perspectives with Judaism, just how I live in general, even like my previous content, the things that I'm focused on. I think that there was a lot of anger and frustration towards religious Judaism as a practice, because I had to do everything in my power to break free from that system. And once you break free of it, you just want to exist outside of it. Like, ultimately, I'm just trying to live as best as possible, and I'm looking for the truth. And I've had some things on my mind, because the Torah is an excellent guide in day-to-day life and how to live. It's also the foundation of the Christian culture. And I have been really hoping that both Jews and Christians would open themselves up to love each other. Like, their God is a Jew, and the Jews worship the Father, and they worship the Father, and they're both in the land of Israel, and they both try and follow God's laws. Christianity is far more influential and powerful, but Judaism is extremely powerful, apparently. All the Jews doing their crazy thing in Israel, and I think that they would both be doing themselves a huge favor if they were to simply love each other, because they follow the same commandments. They truly follow the same commandments, and that's proven in history as well.
Yeah. Well, it's funny how you've moved away from Orthodox Judaism, but you feel inclined to embrace Christianity, even though there is still differences between Christianity and the Torah. Why do you feel more openness to Christianity versus Orthodox Judaism?
Well, once you let go of Orthodox Judaism, then you're no longer an elitist. And once you're no longer elitist, you love your brothers and your sisters, and you love all people. So if you take a line like treat thy neighbor as thyself, right? If you take Christian theology, which is very much in line with the Torah in practice. I mean, again, Christians came to this country, America, and really up until the founding fathers into the 1600s, were they keeping the Sabbath? Like, why were Christians keeping the Sabbath? Because it says on the seventh day you shall rest. And whether the seventh day is Friday evening to Saturday evening, or it's Saturday, or it's Sunday, you're ultimately coming to the seventh day of the week, however it is that you count it, and you're resting. And so people who replicate these actions reap the benefits.
Mm. And you find the Christians to be more in line with the commandments than the Jews?
Totally. If you look at Judaism for how it stands now, we don't follow the Torah. We follow Orthodox Judaism. To break down the difference of my theology and the Orthodox theology, they believe that the Torah, which is the 5 books of Moses, and the oral Torah need to be fulfilled simultaneously at the same time. That quality of living is not a lifestyle that I want to live. So just based on having choice, I simply push myself away from it. If you were to believe in the divine narrative that Yehovah, Adonai, Hashem, Elohim, however it is that you want to refer to him, that God, the God of the Bible, the God of the Torah, actually is the God of all earth, and he punishes and rewards those who follow his decrees and his ordinances, then from a perspective of faith, you would want to follow it how God said to follow it. And so if you just look at simple history, you have 1,500 years in which we did not have an oral tradition. We did not have it, And I think some good key evidence here is that written tradition is what separates religion. And if you were to talk about older religions than Judaism, like Buddhism and the Zoroastrian religion, for example, just because they're older religions doesn't mean that they had a written tradition.
Right. How
And
interesting
the
is
written
it
tradition
that
comes...
the oral Torah only became a thing once it was written down, right?
Yeah, of course, but also from the historical perspective, if the Zoroastrians were practicing their religion for 500 to almost 1,000 years before the Jews came into fruition, then, or into existence, you have them as something that predates the Jews, right? But their writings came about 400-500 years after the 5 books of Moses came out. So really, the leading religion for the oldest piece of written doctrine outside of the Code of Hammurabi is the 5 books of Moses. And that should be read simply to increase education, which is a separate subject we can dive into shortly.
Yeah, I see what you're saying, and we've discussed this off camera as well as to what is the lesser of two evils. Is it better to be a Christian or an Orthodox Jew? And I think we both agree
but
that...
you see, I don't see it as a lesser of two evils. Like, Orthodox Judaism has you follow a completely made-up doctrine that was established 1,500 years after the written Torah, and they want to pretend that it was there for 1,500 years. So that is just a blatant lie. So their religion is based on a blatant lie. And then you look into the religion as to what are the things that the Orthodox requires me to do, and what is it that God has required me to do, right? The kippah is a simple one. And I know that people are super attached to their kippah. And, you know, I make this point quite often. Africans with those big bolo things, they stretch out their lips in Africa, are very attached to their bizarre and freaky tradition. Yeah, exactly. Yet I would advise them to maybe get rid of that tradition just because it's long-standing, right? And again, the kippah is not even that long-standing if you look at it from a historical perspective.
Yeah, and the way I see it, Christians have a more fundamental faith than Jews. Jews have some sort of weird, complex, winding way to get to their faith, where they believe in the Torah, but they don't, and everyone has their own approach to the Torah, whereas Christians just have a more wholesome faith in the Bible, I find, and that's obviously what's necessary in order to really be God-fearing. You have to enter in with a wholesome attitude, and the Jewish attitude is the furthest thing from wholesome. It's manipulative, it's constantly seeing how we can doctor the scripture and change things, and I do believe that Christianity has changed the Torah and deviated as well, but let's think about the fact that the Jewish people are supposed to be the ones who actually follow the Torah. And so if you have non-Jews who follow Jesus who are following the Torah better than Jews who are supposed to be following the Torah, it's quite clear who's superior.
I also, since we're on that subject, just to create clarity in the minds of others, where a lot of this elitism comes from Judaism, which is also a vast difference between Orthodox Judaism and I say Orthodox Judaism because the Torah is the piece of document that created Christianity, and also their God is a Jew. So, you know, it speaks for itself. And you have, you have all the overlaps, but I kind of lost my point right there.
No,
Yeah.
no worries. Again, I think that what we're looking at with Christianity is an evolution of faith over thousands of years. But with Judaism, it's an evolution of legalism and hyper focus on man's interpretation by the people who are supposed to be most godly. Yet they're the most entrenched in manly commandments. And with regards to the Talmud and the elitism, a gentleman told me yesterday that before the Holocaust, the Nazis were using these same propaganda pieces of Talmud where the Jews are outright denouncing non-Jews and saying, look what they think of us. Now, that doesn't justify killing Jewish babies, obviously, and the Nazis were evil. But the point is that the Jews leave themselves open to attack by not following God and by being pieces of shit. And, you know, God is the judge of how that plays out. But the point is that if you're doing something wrong, you can't just be like, well, I'm not guilty because you're worse. You know, that's not really a a
Yeah,
response.
so actually I remember the point in which I was trying to make, which was, what is it that the Jewish people actually are from the perspective of the 5 books, if you quote the literature? They're not a chosen people, they're a treasured people. And I think that that is a very important distinction. And on top of them being a treasured people, they're supposed to be a holy people. So they are the priest amongst the nations. So if you're the priest amongst the nations, then you have a higher standard of living than most people. I mean, just look at history and even recent nuns and popes. Like, if you look at who's the famous nun, like the most famous nun that you know?
Yeah, Mother Teresa?
Mother Teresa, there you go. And Mother Teresa is famous for having taken on not only celibacy and the entire Catholic doctrine upon herself, but also to establish it for all people who want to work for her. And she created an organization to help the poorest of the poor and the sickest of the sick. And all those who were willing to help had to be willing to be sick, to be celibate, and to be poor. And that was part of their agreements that they made for the rest of their life, right? I don't think that that's a great thing to be doing in terms of, like, you don't need to bring yourself down to zero in order to help people. But her intention and what she was attempting and what it's lasted is pretty amazing. You know, like, it really is. Like, she has huge organizations with thousands and thousands of people who would have never had help because this woman decided to commit herself to God, at least into an intention.
But I think that's a good point that you make, is that it's not their job to follow the Torah. It's the treasured people that claim to be part of God's people. They're the ones who need to follow the Torah. Other people they're not even the ones who are called to do it. They can do it if they want to, but they're not obligated. The Jews are the ones who are obligated, and they're failing at it. So what's their excuse?
That's why I think they get the consequence.
Yeah.
I mean, look at history for the past 2,000 years for Jewish people. Again, it's like such an obvious correlation.
So obvious.
1,500 years of written Torah, great heroes and prophets, and amazing accomplishments, more so than any other nation,
and
which
a kingdom.
Influenced all of the empires that were greater than, potentially you could say, than America. You know, the Greek and the Roman Empire is much longer standing, much more vast. And the Jews not only influenced that, but they were, again, this overlapping the 1,500 years in which we were following written Torah. The moment we establish the Talmud and the Mishnah, well, the Mishnah, of course, first, but oral Torah as some sort of thing that was connected to Judaism the whole time, we have been outside of the land for 2,000 years. We have been kicked out of 109 different countries. Everybody hates us. We actually have very few accomplishments during that period of time, which is really unfortunate.
Yeah, other
the
than
greatest
people,
accomplishments
like
are
scientific Jews or stuff.
well,
like
no,
that,
because the greatest leading minds in the world were not the scientific Jews over those past 2,000 years. Like, you're talking like Christ onwards, so you start counting from the Christian
Isaac
faith.
Newton, and they're
but
not
that's
Jews.
much later. We're talking the 1900s. You have like basically the full 2,000 years.
Plato,
Very few people, and again, Aristotle and
They're not
Plato,
Jews,
not Jews, right? And so you have who are considered the great minds of the Jews. The rabbinic mysticism guys, those were considered the great minds. And the Jews went wild for them. They sold their homes, they traveled great lands, they created
their
50
graves.
different messiahs, right? Like, what are you supposed to do about a people who've created 50 different messiahs in the past 2,000 years? Like, look at your own
At
religion
least the Christians
and
have been
judge yourself.
consistent, huh? They just have one.
Yeah, exactly. They have one. They've been pretty consistent about the whole thing. I respect that, you know, and I don't like the idea of the Messiah. I don't think that helps Jews. I don't think that helps Christians.
Yeah, same here.
And I think that I can make a good point for it as well.
Yeah. No, I think we agree on that, and the whole messianic thing is just frustrating to me because it's not that there aren't leaders who are instrumental in creating redemption and salvation, but when people center their focus of their worship around a savior, Messiah, they are completely destroying their individuality and their own obligations to God. And you know, that's quite evident. But again, yes, this point, 2,000 years of exile and persecution correlating perfectly with rabbinic Judaism. I mean, literally from the beginning of the exile, the rabbis immediately took control. There's actually a story with the rabbi who asked for Yavne to be saved. So Yavne was like a yeshiva town. And instead of asking for, say, the temple to be saved, he asked for the rabbis to be saved. And then they relocated and then began a yeshiva Talmud-based culture that lasted for 2,000 years, that has been the leadership of the Jewish people. But yeah, as you said, there's no accomplishment in that. Well, what has been the accomplishment? Nothing.
Well, no, you've only been attacked and pushed away from other nations as opposed to having the protection and the blessing of God. And again,
which, by the way, is the promise in the Torah. If you follow the Torah, you'll have the peace and protection of other nations. You won't be at war and conflict.
Yeah. I mean, again, having stepped away from Orthodox Judaism, I have stepped away from elitism, which has made me focus on people as opposed to a specific group.
Opposed to Jews.
And as a human being who's been given the knowledge of the Torah and of the knowledge of the Christian faith. Remember, like, America is basically founded by deists, you know, like Thomas Jefferson and Thomas Jefferson and Alexander Hamilton, I believe, were both deists. And they believe in a higher power, right? They believe in a higher power, but they don't believe that he really comes down on earth and does all these other things. Now, as a Jew who follows the God of the 5 books of Moses, I happen to believe in the supernatural. I believe in
intervention,
in the narrative, right? And that has allowed me to find God, to find freedom, to help others, and to accomplish, I think, great things for my age and for what I'm doing, you know. And it's stopped me from pushing the boundaries with promiscuity too hard, you know, and I say that as a good thing, you know, like it's all about getting closer to the middle, right? And so that's excellent. Again, when it comes to simple things, like I don't steal, I do my best not to lie, and these are conscious efforts that I'm able to apply into the world on a day-to-day. And as I accomplish each day, as I keep the commandments in my heart and I think to myself, I need to make it to the end of the day by fulfilling these, it just starts to become second nature for you. It's just repetition, right? And so I would want something like that to be an option for people in the education system to hold on to. If you come to closer to the middle, I think is the best way to reference it, as a Christian, then that was a wonderful thing for you to get there. Same thing, even if it's Buddhism or Islam, for that example. There's basically only 5 major religions. You have Christianity, Islam, Buddhism, Hinduism, and it's definitely not Judaism, you know. So, what is the 5th religion that's most popular?
Hinduism?
I believe I said Hinduism already. Or no, I didn't say Hinduism.
So what was it? Hinduism, Buddhism, Islam,
no,
Christianity?
Christianity, Islam, Hinduism, Buddhism, and we're left with one more.
Probably Judaism, even
It's
though
not. It's not Judaism. That's the thing, is that Judaism
Are you saying like in numbers?
Yeah, in terms of numbers, most popular religions that affect the most amount of people.
That's pretty much it. Those are like the big ones.
Considering that I can only remember those top 4, I'll just keep it to a list of 4. The point is all of these religions should be taught in the education system so that people can find something, you know. And obviously, deists do good things. People who are God-based tend to do better than people who are not God-based. I mean, you look at communism being a godless ideology, and look at the benefits of communism. There's no benefits of communism. There's only war, destruction, and death, with astronomically more numbers than anything else. And ignorant people love to blame religion because religion is you know, the cause for all evil in the world. And it's like, no, you know, the cause for evil in the world is people who want to see the world burn, people whose day-to-day lives are simply based around the self, you know, people who have no moral boundaries or ethics. Those people are a lot worse than the religious people. And again, God, there has to be only one. There's only one God. So if there are other gods, there's still got to be a power above them. And people who worship things like spirits and believe in this mysticism, they're the ones giving that stuff power. Because if there's something above all of that that tells you skip all this other Mickey Mouse bullshit.
Actually, interact with them.
Yeah,
That's
don't.
like explicitly a commandment in the Torah.
Don't.
And I just like to think of it that the Torah is the middle ground, the common ground, and the solid ground. And ultimately, if there's anything that we could unite around, it would be the Torah. And the Torah protects you because it gives you clear boundaries. Like the world we live in now has completely corrupted everything from male and female to the relationship of men and women to the roles of men and women to how families and societies are supposed to be structured to what morality even is, to what is God. Like all of that has been completely disintegrated, and none of it even makes sense anymore. The Torah is a return to normalcy. It's a return to structure that's reasonable, that's rooted in reasonable practice. And the reason why I even still try to counteract the Orthodox, even though I'm not doing it from a place still of like, oh, I'm trapped by them, because thank God I've never been more free. But I still think it's necessary to point out what is the Torah and what is not the Torah. Because
I mean, are we not on a mission to help the Jewish people? Like for all those who are curious if I'm an anti-Semite or not, like no, I'm not an anti-Semite. I love the Jewish people. I want their best. I'm simply following the Torah because I see the value in a nation of priests. I see the value in a people who spread the word and maintain a higher holiness than everybody else has to. And that should be viewed as reference, and they're necessary in the world no matter how you cut it. And I think that's the greatest proof to any of this being real. Like there is a supernatural element to the people still existing.
Yeah.
It's just wild.
And one thing I can tell you for sure on the topic of conversion and the Torah's view of conversion is the most humane thing I can think of, where no matter who you are, if you follow the laws of the Torah, you can join the people. I mean, that's completely different than the elitist.
This is a perfect opportunity to jump into what are the major differences between Orthodox Judaism and God's practice. So you mentioned the conversion process. The first thing, well, maybe it's not exactly the first thing that you do. You might want to practice all the laws first and then get circumcision. But circumcision is one of those things that is directly correlated to following the laws of God, of Abraham, the God of Abraham, Isaac, and Jacob, and fulfilling that covenant. So when you circumcise people from the Abrahamic perspective, you're looking at a man who is, about 100 years old, and he had a 13-year-old son, and he had a household of over 300 people that he had raised, and all the males were circumcised in a single day. So if you look at it from the perspective of how they do circumcisions now, they have to remove the full foreskin. They do bizarre and weird practices like sucking the blood from the baby's penis, which is something that gives Jews tons of hate. Like again,
and by the way,
get rid of that. Get rid of that. It's not in the Torah. You understand that Abraham pulled that thing forward. He didn't have anesthesia that he could have stuck into his pubic bone and cauterized a wound.
Everyone has always known what circumcision is.
Yeah,
you
of course.
cut off the foreskin.
And exactly, you pull it forward and you cut as much as you can, and you do that for babies.
Not
you do that for children.
Not only can rabbinic Jews not condemn this practice of matzitza b'peh, which is sucking the baby's penis after circumcision, not only can they not condemn it, they also pretend like we don't know what circumcision is. And so if you ask them, they'll tell you, if you don't have the oral Torah, how do you know what circumcision is? Maybe you should cut off the tip of your nose. It's like, you fucking moron. Like,
well, that's what I'm saying.
Everyone knows
when you talk to people who, when you say, oh, what is circumcision? And they tell you, well, if I didn't know from the tradition that I would cut off the tip of my nose, you just feel like you're talking to a crazy person, and you just want to take steps away from that. Again,
listen, I mean,
with the kippah.
Can I just give you the proof before you go on the kippah? The children of Jacob go to Shechem and say, all of you need to circumcise yourselves. Somehow everyone knew exactly what that meant, because everyone knows the definition of male circumcision. It's cutting off the foreskin.
Yeah, of course. This happened way before that was implemented.
Insane.
On
Anyhow,
a Judaic
go on
perspective.
about the kippah, because I agree with you.
Actually, the
I think
kippah is
it
one of
matters.
the least important things. I just always found it as a...
Well, it gets in the way. It gets in the way.
Again, it's just not an attractive thing. I think the
it's not.
Jews are holy, and they're supposed to be a representation to the world. Like, try and take care of yourself physically and represent yourself as like a holy person. Like even the Christians like took the holiness thing so seriously. Like they're in their like shiny armor, like friggin' gold, and they're all like, what's the word for it?
Decked out.
Maintain, decked out, but also like they're practicing celibacy, and that they're maintaining their aura by not releasing their seed. I'm just trying to make it like a little cooler than it actually is. But
no, celibacy is not.
No, it's not. But again, let's jump into the practices of
Yeah. No, it's
of
so simple.
other things as well. So you have circumcision, God's way, the rabbinic way. You have nida. So again, nida is one of the things in the Torah that is like, damn, like for real, like I can't sleep with my girl on her period. Like, well, okay, I can't do that. It's like, oh, you can't even uncover her nakedness. Okay, fine. Okay, so I can't get her naked.
How long?
How long? Yeah, exactly. How long? And so it says 7 days. If she starts bleeding, you count to the end of the 7 days, it's done. The rabbinic Jews, they implement wait till the bleeding stops, then count 7 days, which could potentially lead to half the month of being separated from your wife, causing issues. And again, the penis is literally a use it or lose it organ. It's a use it or lose it organ. Science supports this entirely. So I recommend people use it. It's got a function. It's wonderful. It not only brings pleasure, but it brings life, And so there needs to be balance in all things. Beyond their ridiculous practice with that, they also have you dunk in a mikveh, spiritually clean water, which is not in the Torah. It's just not in the Torah.
During those 2 weeks.
Yeah, I mean, let's just throw the whole out thing. Like, it doesn't need to happen. It doesn't need to be there. We don't need these ritual bathhouses that everybody needs to go and gather at. You don't need to see 100 dudes' dicks, and you don't need to separate your wives to all have like a fun spa day. It was not that fun,
No, it's literally gross, and not one time in the entire Torah does it say thou shalt immerse in a mikveh. It's a completely fabricated commandment, and they put men and women through these nasty rituals in order to make that happen. Not to mention during the 2 weeks, you're not allowed to touch each other. You're not even allowed to pass something to each other's hands. So, and you have to sleep in separate beds. So we're talking about complete separation for almost 2 weeks out of every month. I mean, that's vile.
Well, again, if these things are not in the literature, then in order to find them, you have to go through hundreds of thousands of pages of books and scattered books that nobody actually wants to read or should read, right? Which keeps the people perpetually confused. Dumb and poor is the phrase that I use for the Orthodox Jews. Okay.
Yeah.
Beyond that, let's move.
Can I just comment on the penis being a use it or lose it organ?
Yeah.
Because the Talmud actually supports that. And
Sure.
Their advice on it is they say there's a little organ on a man's body, and they say if you feed it, it gets hungrier, and if you starve it, it gets full. And so their advice is starve it. All right. And so they tell men to starve their penis and literally not have sex, so that they will not have desires, so that their bodies won't work.
Again, this is one of the major disagreements that I have in the Christian faith, which is that certain people should not be intimate at all. Like, celibacy as a whole is a seriously harmful practice, and not only creates sexual perversion, but tremendous amount of sexual trauma. And like, we don't even need to get into the obvious nature of that.
Literally, the first thing God tells man and woman is have sex, be fruitful and multiply. You can't do that without having sex.
Yeah, no, you're right. And then let's go into kosher, right? Like, this is something that people
simple.
put on such a pedestal, but if it doesn't have an OU on it, then it's not kosher. And that's the thing, is that the people start to follow like an entire restriction on their eating habits without ever understanding why it is that they're following it. It says in a couple different portions in the 5 books of Moses, literally just 2 different accounts, don't eat animals that they need to have split hooves and they chew their cud. When it comes to fish, they need to have scales and fins. Anything that doesn't have scales and fins, you can't eat. And it's not about like a matter of how much or how little, like that is just the standard, okay? And then you go to birds. Don't eat predatory birds, but most people don't anyways. And so they add another ridiculous practice on top of the whole fact that they don't even understand that these are the simple practices, that you need to slaughter the animal in a specific way. Shchita is like something that you want to know where it's from because it sounds fancy and cool. Shchita, it's like shchita just means slaughtering. How to slaughter an animal doesn't say how to do that in the Torah, which means there is no specification. The only specifications are don't eat the blood, and don't eat the fat. Okay.
And by the way, of course, they say you need to salt it. Torah doesn't say you need to salt it. It says you just need to get rid of the blood. You don't need to salt it.
Yeah, you get rid of the blood.
But
But
again,
again,
eat meat from your regular supermarket.
salting does help
It
soak
helps,
up blood.
but you don't have to do it.
You don't have to, but I'm saying everybody does that now. Salting meat is a general practice.
Well, no,
salt
they
is
don't
a preservative.
salt for sure.
I mean, salt in the market is literally called kosher salt because they have been abusing the salt practice for a long time,
Yeah.
and it's taken on that name.
I'm sure they put salt in the meat to preserve it, but the Jewish argument would be they don't put enough salt in the meat to drain the blood the way the Jews do. But the point is the whole salting ritual is not in the Torah. The point is if you get rid of the blood, if you butcher an animal and you spill out the blood and you just have a piece of meat, that's not blood, that's meat. Right? So you can go to your local supermarket and buy a steak, by the way, which will be 4 times lower price, and you don't have to go to the rabbis in order to get your steak.
By the way, these are some major differences that will just increase the quality of your life.
I spoke to a guy today. He's like, "You mean to tell me I can have KFC?"
Oh,
like, sure.
let's throw in another ridiculous one. Like, remember, 80% of the Jews are non-practicing. So right now, as I'm speaking, I'm trying to speak to the non-practicing Jews who might be interested in the origin of the religion. It's a pretty simple thing. You go and you read from start to finish the 5 books of Moses with no commentary. Then you'll understand all the laws. You can call up your friends and you can talk to other people if you're confused on certain instances, but it ultimately says what it has to say. And during this, it talks about do not cook a kid in the milk of its mother. Okay? And that is the law. Do not cook a kid in the milk of its mother. Now, I don't do that. You don't do that. So a kid is a goat. You don't cook a baby goat in the milk of its mother. Perhaps that was something that you could have done in the past. Maybe it has something to do with cruelty, right? And so we avoid that particular thing. And it's arbitrary. It's not as important as everybody makes it out to be. Don't cook a kid in the milk of its mother certainly doesn't say don't cook meat and cheese together. It certainly doesn't say don't cook meat and cheese together or wait 6 hours in between both, because if you have milk and then you have meat, the milk will drain down your stomach and the meat will then cook after. But if you put the meat in your stomach and then the milk on top, you'll be cooking them in your stomach together. The person who says that is a moron. They're an idiot, and they should be berated for being a moron and an idiot, okay? And that is where the anger comes from the whole thing, because I grew up having to accept that being moronic was okay. And it's not. And so as a human being who's free of these things, I look at culture and religion, and I have a good understanding of world history in general. And the world has benefited from the practices of the 5 books of Moses as a piece of literature. And it influenced the Christian culture, which took it much, much farther than the Jews. And it should be considered by all people is there a way to amend the 5 books of Moses so the rest of the world can actually follow this doctrine? And more than a maybe, it looks quite likely, because the people follow it in that way, and they have a clear way of following it. And in general, most people are followers. They're not leaders. So they don't have a good understanding of what they're doing either way. And so I have to look at these things as a whole now. As an American, I am living as somebody who's much freer than other countries, who has the ability to be a Jewish man who also doesn't follow Judaism in its normal practice, and works with Christians and Muslims and a boxing gym. There's black, whites, Mexicans, Indians, everybody of all cultures, and we all are even kind of violent with each other, yet we find peace. What an amazing thing to be doing and to have the opportunity to do so. Again, this boxing gym is actually a church. I prefer the term church because almost nothing comes good out of a synagogue, because the whole reason to have a synagogue is to do Orthodox Judaic practices. If it had to do with following God's Torah, then I would love synagogues more, and I would want to have a synagogue here. But ultimately, I can teach the 5 books of Moses in a church. I can't really teach the 5 books of Moses in a Jewish school of thought, because they'll be like, that is a completely confusing document that nobody can understand, and that's why you need my 100,000-page document that I wrote.
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
What a joke, Like, if you're Jewish, just wake up. Wake up and understand that the words are real. The words are important. There is a mystical and a supernatural nature to your existence as a people. You're important. Do the thing that you were made to do.
Yeah, and I just want to point out, I'm currently in the process of translating Deuteronomy. I can't even begin to tell you how many times it says, follow the words that are written in this Torah. Okay? Written as in written down. In this Torah as in not another Torah. Moses completed writing this Torah. Okay? There is no other Torah. There is no oral Torah. The Torah is written in its completion.
I made that point about the Zoroastrians because I wanted to make the point of how important a written document is. Written documents are kind of important. Like, America didn't come together through oral law and oral tradition. It was a written piece of document. It started with the Declaration of Independence, and it upgraded to the Constitution.
Yeah, and in this case, we're talking about a written document from God that you may not add or subtract to. So, pretty important to know what it says in this
but I'm saying, like, even if you wanted to lower the stakes from God to human beings trying to live together civilly under a government,
still got to know what it says.
You absolutely have to know what it says, and it's got to be a written document, not an oral tradition. Oral traditions don't work like
Exactly, because they're entirely left up to speculation. You say this is the oral tradition, I say this is the oral tradition, right? So,
well, the reason they're such fools is because they're written the whole thing down now, and they have to study that all day.
And now they have to defend the indefensible. And when people pull up a statement from the Talmud, they're like, well, you don't understand. It's not in context. It's like, listen, if out of context I said I think babies should die, is there any context that statement makes sense? You know, like, this is insane. There is no context in which it's correct.
Speaking of babies dying, there's a practical response to wanting to learn these things and put them out into the world, because we live in a culturally religious country, meaning that it's not an actual religious country in the sense that we can practice all sorts of religion, and God is not necessarily a part of the founding documents that we have. It's very, very little have to do with that. And by biblically influenced, it's simply biblically influenced by the minds of people who were very educated on the biblical culture that they were walking on. The highest train of thought was considered the Bible, or those who understood it. And so they all came to America, and that was the highest form of intellectualism, right? And all the people who were the founders of this particular country were obviously heavily influenced. And then you look at all these different cultures and groups with also thousands of years of religious backing and understanding behind it, but to a very simple start of, we are the Protestants, we are the Quakers, and we want to follow the law as it's written. We don't want to be controlled. We want to be a democracy, okay? And it worked. It worked. So try and apply what works into your life, and try not to ruin your life by following the mystical practices of other people, who, by the way, gain their power off of your faith and belief.
Yeah, off of your stupidity.
Off your stupidity.
And by the way,
but also they get it off of your good faith. Like, it's hard to just say that you're stupid. Like, I don't think that I was stupid for many, many years for following it.
There's good intentions, yeah.
Not only is there good intention, but within the frame of the lack of knowledge that I was given, it is logical to follow their way. It starts to make sense because they're limiting the information. It's the only thing that you know.
Yeah.
So you're not stupid, you're misled. And this could potentially be part of the prophecies of Isaiah, if you believe in that sort of stuff, where it's like, your leaders will mislead you and women will dominate you. It's like, boy, do I see that happening every day. And that's...
Look, with regards to the brotherhood of man that has been introduced by the United States, that's literally what they wrote in their founding document. We believe that all men are endowed by their Creator with unalienable rights, and we're all equal under God, and no one is better than anyone else. We all have the same laws. We all have the same humanity. And those were ideas that they derived from the Torah. Those are
contradictions, by the way, because you have a state that is claiming equality amongst races and people, yet they own slaves, right?
Right.
But you see, the intention behind that led up to people in the country saying, we can't stand for this contradiction anymore. So in a 300-year timeline, people came up with the idea that we have been doing something wrong, and it contradicts the literature. The Jews have been following something for 2,000 years that completely contradicts the literature, and they're not willing to change their ways. That, to me, is a stiff-necked people, just like the literature. And if you want to be so dumb and stiff-necked to say that this is how we've been and this is how we are and we're going to live in our shit, then you go live in your shit. I want nothing to do with that. And if you want to say that I'm not, a Jew, I'm an anti-Semite, I'm a heretic, fine. I live a much better quality of life. I don't have to live a lie. I don't have to live with limitations. God is a God of love, right? God is not a God of fear and death and chaos and restriction. He wants to give you freedom. The reason I follow the religion is because it gives me freedom.
It's Exodus. God took us out of slavery to be free, not to be slaves again. And the reality is we deserve freedom. And just for these people to get off their high horse, they are literally a tiny fraction of the Jewish people. And the Jewish people are a tiny fraction of humanity. So
They don't even make the top 5 influential cultures.
Yeah, no, they practically
right
don't
here.
exist. And, that's the whole thing is you only have significance if you actually follow God, if you actually follow the truth. But the minute you stop following God, you just become a problem in the world. And again, unfortunately, as of today, the Jews are really only referenced to prove a point that something's wrong, that something's not good. And that, that's just sad because the Jews are supposed to be a light. They're supposed to be a blessing. And
God, I realize why I skipped out on number 5. So there's Christianity, Islam. So you got Christianity with 2.3 billion followers, Islam with 1.9 billion followers, Hinduism with 1.2 billion followers, Buddhism with 520 million followers, and then Sikhism.
I was going to say that.
That's crazy.
It's India. It's Indian.
Yeah,
religion.
but once you cover Hinduism,
you think it's all the same
branches.
No,
Exactly.
I think Sikhism actually. I researched it once. He basically just believes in all the religions. So he's like, the Torah, the Bible, Jesus, Buddha, everyone. It's everyone all together. So
well, if you even wanted to mock it all up to divinely inspired religion by a deist God who influenced the minds of certain individuals to come up with literature that has advanced society, you would still start with the oldest written doctrine, which is Judaism. And then in terms of popularity, you have Christianity crushing the game there. But Hinduism is still post. When it comes to a written doctrine, it's post Judaism.
Yeah, which means they're really just following in the footsteps of Judaism.
This is not a typical train of thought, by the way. Most people feel and they ignorantly believe that there are older written doctrines in the 5 books of Moses. Other than the Code of Hammurabi, that is not true. There's simply oral tradition. And I completely dispute oral tradition on basically every front. I don't think that these things are serving anybody.
No.
I see oral tradition as cultural niceties that you could or could not apply to your house.
Hopefully they're cultural niceties. Usually they're cultural ugliness that are maintained as doctrine and obligation.
Obligation, absolutely.
Really just ugly. Not even.
It is ugly.
Not even good.
It is ugly.
Sometimes there's nice things. Like I'd say, generously 10% out of tradition is good, but probably more realistically 5%.
Yeah.
But that's pretty low.
Yeah.
Considering they say it's all from God. So we got it covered. Looks like the gym is getting active.
But now for just some new content, some new virality, right? We have to talk about just a little bit modernity and its evil, and how us preaching the word of God as it is simply a tool for people to step away from this extremely satanic and godless way of living. Right?
Yeah.
So in my mind, the front runner is, since 1997, there has been 900 million abortions. 900 million. That's 10 times as much death worldwide as World War II. That is 76 million worldwide every single year. That means that 1/3 of the population, which is Gen Z, was never born. If you look at the United States of America just alone, as opposed to worldwide, there's about 3.5 to 4 million people every single year, between 3 and 4 every year born into the US. 1 million is aborted every single year. What is the thing that has made this very, very small and niche moral complication, however you cut it, to be 1/3 of the population? And all the things that would have to happen to you to get to that point where I've made a bad mistake. That would be from the ethical side. I made a bad mistake and I want to bring a life into this world. I was raped. I was raped again. I was raped. You keep saying that. That means that 1/3 of the population is having this sort of abuse happened to them by their brothers, their sisters, their uncles, their neighbors.
Yeah, it's just evil on the face of the earth.
Even if you wanted to say, nah, it's not killing a third of the population and masking the whole thing with it being
it's the product of evil.
Freedom,
Yeah.
with it being freedom, masking the whole thing with that being liberation. And so, to me, the Bible would point to
Choose life.
choose life, not death. And if you want to just look at things from a historical perspective to how civilizations fall apart, particularly empires, and I think it's safe to say that the United States is an empire at this point. It's pretty beefy boy, as they say. And, you have the Roman and Greek Empire with a decline in population and birth rate mixed with overtaxation and spreading of borders. Like, those are the simple things. You don't even have to go into the nuanced gender bending and the Spartans were gay and things that could potentially be myths, right? Again, I don't believe any of these things are myths. I think they all line up pretty well documented. And again, confusion of gender is a major component that now we're able to embody and create people and turn them into walking wounds. Did you know that even as early as the 1900s that you couldn't really figure out who was gay or not? Being gay was illegal, right? And when you believed in a morally upright society that would follow the doctrine as it's written, where bestiality is bad, homosexuality is right next to that, and people love thy neighbor as thyself. Turn one page. Kill gays.
Yeah, exactly.
Open your eyes, people.
The same God said that.
And this is the thing. That same God is Christ, if you want to look at it that way. As a Christian,
or is the Son.
That's what I'm saying. But to them, the Son and the Father is the same thing. So I don't see my need to have to start worshiping Christ because I believe in the Father. And if that's my relationship, then I'm going straight to the source. If you're a Christian, and that's the way that you know God, and for you to follow His laws, and that makes sense to you, then go for it. I'm not here to stop you from doing that. But in my belief as a Jew, like I explained earlier, I have to be the priest amongst the nation, right? If anything, this is an interesting one because Christ does say that He's God. When you talk to a lot of Christians, they find a way to be like, no, Christ never does say that He's God.
Well, he never says it outright, but he implies it. But also, He's called the Son of God. And then I just heard a verse in Acts or something where it refers to the God of Jesus. It's oh God. Yeah. And then He's on the cross and He's like, my God, right? So who's He talking to?
Well, that's what I'm saying. It really depends on who you talk to, right? And I actually wanted to backtrack to this whole homosexuality thing. You couldn't actually track that. From a percentage basis, it would be less than 1% of the populace up until the 1960s.
Also, no one would admit it either.
Of course, because it was an offense that would shun you from society. Which again, by the way, you're looking at a hugely successful country for many, many years with this practice. Maybe we didn't have to let go of some things. Maybe we didn't have to let go of some things. Okay. Let's be more statistical. You go into the 1960s, where the birth control and feminism and this whole new ideology comes into the picture. You have about a 10% of the population. But now with Gen Z, you have 20% of people identifying with this.
And growing.
20%.
No, it's frightening.
I'm saying this is extremely frightening.
It's destruction.
This is not liberation.
It's
this is not
freedom.
Of course. I mean, you cannot procreate under these terms.
Yep.
And it also is purely based on sexual desire. So once you realize that people are sleeping with children because of sexual desire.
Sleeping with their sister because of sexual desire. Sleeping with their mother because of sexual desire.
With animals because of sexual desire.
They're in love.
Yeah. Well, maybe you shouldn't love everybody, that there's limitations on it. I think the Bible is perhaps the only document that strictly lists immoral sexual behaviors, that even if you were to remove the homosexuality, because we just so pro-gay here in the U.S., you're still 98% agreeing with me with all the other sexual immoralities. Unfortunately, we live in a porn culture that glorifies the lifestyle that wants to have incest, promiscuity, and loving of whoever it is that you want as a staple for the lifestyle that you're supposed to live. And I think there's a reason for the chaos and the discomfort that we live in, though God-fearing people from the Judeo-Christian faith, in my opinion, seem to be putting the best foot forward. And if you wanted to look at it from a biblical perspective, the Bible is just a window, right? You have the back end and the front end. The back end is Christ going all the way through to Yahweh, and then there's Yahweh going all the way through to Christ.
Well, look, the one good thing is that the Bible is not going anywhere. There's nothing anyone can do to get rid of the Bible. It's just, it's the biggest book in the world. It's the oldest book in the world. And even if someone went around trying to burn Bibles, they would never be able to do it.
Yeah, also, if it was the biggest Ponzi scheme that was ever created, why did nobody add to it for the past 2,000 years?
Yeah, and why did no one change it? Why have the Jews and the Christians been maintaining the exact same Bible, even though they were completely at odds with each other?
These are great questions people should be asking themselves. I really think the root of all of this really comes back down to education. Because if you were to just teach people religion, which is one of their required classes or should be, and then you want to teach them history, if they were to read and you wanted to say that all of them are equal, okay, all those top 5 religions, like if I went to a school in America, I've never even heard of the Sikhism. You want to Sikhism.
Yeah.
Why don't you share with me the doctrine that is Sikhism, okay? I would be down to read that. I've read Mickey Mouse stories like Charlotte's Web. Why don't we read the Bible, you know? I don't see that as being harmful, particularly if it's not being pushed on people as a must be.
Yeah. At least know what it says.
As a suggestion, know what it says. It's great literature. It's the oldest literature. It'll give you a frame for history because it is historical. And so, I think that about sums it up for me if you want to finish this out.
Well, I think we covered it. Another day with the Torah. It's a struggle every day. People want to tell you you're a moron for believing it. Do they provide alternatives? No. The alternative to the Torah is essentially just nothing. Whatever. I don't know anything. I'll just put my head down and know nothing and have no clarity. The fact that the Torah...
Know nothing and be nothing.
Yeah, know nothing and be nothing. Exactly. The fact that the Torah exists in the form that it does, the fact that it provides the clarity that it does, that is the evidence. The evidence is within the document itself. It speaks louder than words. It thunders throughout thousands of years. And God being real and the fact that He's already spoken to us is the greatest confirmation we need that we are created in His image and that our lives do matter. And if enough people embrace these values, then we can actually start to heal society with the principles that God has given us thousands of years ago. We've already been told what to do, so let's do it.
Yeah, we have been. We totally have been. Oh, man. Still feeling the effects of Charlie Kirk's death.
No, dude, that's never going to stop.
Because I just think about it, I'm like,
significant.
I don't speak as well as this man. I'm educated, but I'm not that educated. And I speak very much in line with his principles.
He was also at such a high level of politics
That's what I'm saying.
and influence.
Such a high level, just as a human being of work as well. His accomplishments are so admirable.
So wonderful.
As a man. And they killed him for that. They killed him.
Yeah, exactly.
And by they, it's just the opposition to
Whoever wanted
a
him
biblical
dead.
person. That's an obvious fact.
Yeah.
In opposition to a biblical person. And I'm here speaking as a biblical man, not feeling easy in the country. And the best thing that I can do is do what Charlie Kirk would do, which would be to speak about it, and to use the power of your tongue.
So far, there's still freedom of speech somewhat, so
Yeah,
we'll continue talking.
we will.
God bless.
God bless.